Hello, broadcast community. It is MJ Calloway here with your next Bounce Up broadcast. And I am so excited to have a guest today who is an expert in three different areas. So, welcome, Robbie. So thrilled to have you today.
MJ, thanks for having me here. This is awesome.
It's so great. You have so much knowledge, and I can't wait to dive in. Before I do so, where in the world are you tuning in from?
The suburbs of Philadelphia.
Oh my goodness, we're in the same state.
Look at
You're on the
that.
other side of the state. And for our audience here, I virtually met Robbie a week ago, actually less than a week ago. It was last Friday. So
Mhm.
it's so awesome whenever we meet someone virtually and they can have them on our broadcast. And he also filled in, so give him kudos because he filled in for my guest who was supposed to be on today, who ended up with COVID and had to
Mhm.
back out. So I appreciate Robbie you jumping in like this.
My pleasure.
So you are an expert in three areas. So can you share with us those three areas?
So prior to the pandemic, I spent over a decade working to be recognized as a networking expert with a focus on teaching people how to network at conferences. Wrote a book on the topic, um, coaching program, podcast, which I'm still running, and a TEDx talk. But again, March 2020, no one needed to know how to do eye contact, business cards, shaking hands, or body language. So I had to reinvent myself. I had to really think through how to show up and add value. And I became a virtual event design consultant and executive Zoom producer. I also certify speakers and Zoom producers to become certified virtual event professionals. And I get hired by organizations to bring their events online with less stress and greater participant engagement. That business grew from zero to multiple six figures very quickly. And I got lots of questions about how I did it. And the secret is that I'm a business growth strategist. And I was treating myself like a client in those early days 2 years ago this
Mm.
week, trying to figure out how to show up and support people and also monetize. And so my second book came out last year, which is really the answer to the how did you do that question. It's all about how to build an audience before trying to sell a new offer.
Oh, which makes so much sense. I can only imagine how many people needed you during the first of the pandemic. I mean, even now, because we're doing both, we're doing hybrid,
Right.
live with the virtual. And Robbie is a master networker. That is how we connected after we met virtually. He reached out to me and we had a couple of messages going back and forth. And then voila, here we are.
That's right.
So, for today, if we can concentrate on the business growth strategies,
Hmm.
most of our audience is in business, and that probably would be the best way for us to go today. So, with it, you talk about a small list with big results. So, can you back up and explain small list, what it means, and also then just go into how they can use a small list? So, big question.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the people I work with, and I tend to work with entrepreneurial women in their 50s and beyond. That's sort of my demographic that's been attracted to my work for years. They're looking to grow their impact and income. They're ready to share everything they've learned and experienced and all their expertise, but they're feeling a little bit like a novice because it's new. They're trying to create a new revenue stream. They're trying to do maybe their first one-to-many group after doing years of either speaking on stages or coaching one-on-one. And so there's a discomfort about getting outside your comfort zone. And my remedy is to really lean into your existing network. So most of the times when we try to sell something, we get an idea, we're experts, we get an idea of an offer, and we create some kind of solution based on what we think our market needs. And we might spend months tweaking it, putting together, perfecting it, creating it all, sometimes with slides and with decks and videos. And then you bring it to the marketplace. The marketplace says, like, who are you? What is this? I don't need this. And we're kind of devastated. And when we sit back and think about it, we make some assumptions. And one of them is that it didn't work because we didn't have a big enough email list. And the other one I keep hearing is I didn't know how to market it. And also I didn't know exactly who my ideal client was. Now I'm going to help you solve all three of those problems. Small email list, I get it. I'm a believer in sending a weekly email, haven't done so for years, but the email alone isn't what you need. You actually just need to lean into existing relationships that you have And so my second book, Small List, Big Results, Launch a Successful Offer No Matter the Size of Your Email List, is how to do research calls because you're able to discover likely prospects and likely referral partners from within your existing network who already know, like, and trust you. Have research calls with them, figure out exactly what they need, and then enroll some of them in a pilot, whether that's a one-on-one or a group. Modality is not my part. It's really on behalf of what your prospect needs. So I just think that when we diagnose the problem wrong, then we find solutions that don't help us. And so if you have been thinking about doing Facebook ads, but you haven't been selling the offer, that's probably a waste of your money. If you're thinking, oh, I'm going to run a virtual summit because I heard that's a really great way to get a lot of people on my email list, probably also not going to solve your problem and a lot of work. So I'm saying 20 or 30 calls to the right kind of people over the next 6 to 12 weeks. It will save you years of time.
Okay, so let's go back because that was a lot there. And this is definitely one of those broadcasts where I will need to listen to the replay. So going back, when you're talking about research, so research calls, reaching out, could you give us some examples of what you mean by research and research calls?
Yeah, the tendency is to reach out to people and ask questions after we've already put something together. And then those calls go like, hey, green button or blue button, what do you think? That's not a research call, folks. So you really have to go into this with an open mind, with a curiosity, with a willingness to learn, and be guided by the needs of your prospects. Now, you are the expert, but in my book, I describe this as a difference between little p thinking, little p awareness, and big P awareness. So little p problems are the problems that your prospects are experiencing. Some might call those also symptoms. They wouldn't, which is why I call them little problems. And so they're like, that's the thing they want to solve for. And you are aware of the bigger problem. And so part of the goal of a research call or any messaging that you do is to help people shift from that little p to big P awareness so that they're open to the solution that you want to sell them. Because if you come to them with a ready-made solution for a problem they don't think they have, that's why they don't want to buy from you. So it's really I have a very specific formulaic strategy of going through, could be your LinkedIn list, and how do you prioritize who are the right people? How do you discover the likely prospects from within the thousands of people you have? How do you find those 20 that you're going to call? And then when you get on the call, it's actually not that you're going to do all this talking. It's that you're going to ask them to come with 3 things to discuss, 3 questions, problems, scenarios, challenges, and you don't solve them. You ask them why these 3, how has this impacted your life, your job, your bottom line, your team, your morale? What have you tried? What's worked? What do you think would work? What do you think you need? What kind of resources? What kind of right? So like, what are you doing? You're actually coaching them to start to think about this not as a little isolated problem, but as part of the bigger problem. And you end the call with giving them 1 or 2 next steps to think about and try, and tell them you'll circle back after you've done more calls when you have a better understanding of what this is. So you're positioning yourself as an authority, as a resource, as an expert, and you're giving them something valuable, but you're not just, you're not filling their head with an hour's worth of free advice, which I can go on and on about why that doesn't work. But it's really that you gather all this intel. And I love using Zoom for this because there's a way to do captions for free in Zoom, whether that's paid Zoom or free Zoom. That means you get the transcript as well when you hit record, and it saves you a step. And then you really want to look at that language. In my book, I have an example. What if you design something for women who are fatigued, but you interview 20 women and 12 use the word exhausted and none use the word fatigued? You probably should shift your language because fatigue might be your word. That's the more academic experty way of thinking about it. But when women think about it and they look at your copy, they're not going to feel as connected if you don't use their word. So those are some examples of how to think about research calls.
Oh my goodness, and it's so true. I know I can be, being a writer, being clever, and I come up with these clever phrases, and then it doesn't make sense to someone else. So you, through that, basically we're asking, or when we get down to the nitty gritty, we're asking several questions to get their feedback rather than giving them an A, B, C.
We're actually asking them. So the original reach out, let's say I was going through my LinkedIn, I see your name, and I'm like, oh yeah, MJ, I think would she's a close enough contact. I think she'd get back to me. Her influence in this area, she has some influence, but it's not like she owns like a cable station. Okay, like she'd be very interested in this conversation. Okay, so now I put you in the likely prospect pool, and then I shoot you a note and I say, hey, I'm working on something, and before I get too far down the path, I want to test some of my assumptions. And because of your experience with XYZ, I thought of you, and I wondered if you'd spare some time to talk to me about this and just share your perspective. That's not a sales call. I am not selling anything, right? I'm not pitching. I'm not telling them I want their feedback on a particular thing. I'm asking for their perspective, and people like giving an opinion.
Absolutely.
They say yes, you circle back and you say, great. I have a calendaring link to make scheduling easier. Would you mind using it? Or if you have one, I'm happy to use yours. And if you could prepare for this call by just thinking about what are three topics, questions, scenarios, whatever you want to phrase it, that you could bring, and you want to send them a little reminder to do that. And then at the beginning of the call, you have 5-minute chit chat catch up, and it's your job to move it forward because you could spend an entire hour chit chatting.
Yes.
And you sort of say, hey, you know what? Let's schedule another time for a catch up. This has been really fun, but I know you really set aside time to talk to me about this, and I deeply appreciate it. So what were those 3 things? And then you spend 15 minutes asking questions about those 3 things. Is there something else that's urgent that's now coming to the fore that you hadn't thought about? What would you have to do first before you did all these other things? Now let's say you were selling an app. Okay. And one of your questions might be, oh, did you look in the App Store for a solution to that? And they say, no. Well, you know what you just heard? They're not going to buy your app either.
Right.
I think that too often we hear the inkling of a problem and believe that it's urgent and that people will buy a solution. It's not. And if they tell you their past behavior didn't involve, the most basic, like look in Google, then that's just, that's not a thing that they're prioritizing. And you may have to figure out what it is they are and maybe see if you can help them with that. But don't hear a problem where there isn't one. And then the last 10 minutes is just giving them a couple of high level, and I always like to couch it like this. Like, listen, when I work with my clients, we do a 3-hour deep dive. So I understand their vision and their values before I set any kind of strategy. I've talked about this with 15 minutes for you. So this is not that. But here are a couple of things that the folks I have been working with have seemed to found valuable to get started. You might hit some road bumps. It may not work as planned. Reach out to me if that's the case. If you have success, reach out to me. I would love to hear about it. And I will circle back to you in about a month after I've had a few more of these calls to let you know what I'm learning.
So what you did in there at the end, because you did a lot in there, but at the end, you prefaced that this is what I do with my clients, but this isn't it. But I am going to give you something of value before you get off the phone.
Right.
So you set yourself up to do business, yet you also gave value to someone else, all in the same call that you were gathering information. So it's a brilliant strategy.
Yeah.
Now,
Rob, thank you for naming that.
You have several people here. So Dr. Rhonda and Ben and somebody who's a cheerleader for you. Is it Paya?
Paya? Oh, yes.
Paya. So we even put up there your book so that our audience can see that. So hello to everyone. Carl, if you have questions for Robbie, please go ahead and put them in here. So we'd be happy to, I'm sure Robbie, I'm saying he'd be happy to answer them. I'm sure he would. So, but I love the way too that you broke down the call. So anybody, and you have this in your book, correct? Your book gives you do you have a copy of the book there? You can hold
I do.
up?
Yeah, I do.
Let's show that.
So the book, it's a quick read that you will spend the next 10 years referring to. It's meant to be a lived book. It's a book you read and then you work through. And so each section has actionable steps. And then I pulled out into workbooks and worksheets the most tangible content, the stuff that you would really want to interact with. And I created a big results toolkit which you can actually access at robbiesamuels.com/MJ. So if Pay, if you could drop that in, Pay is my assistant. She's wonderful. So
Okay.
robbiesamuels.com/MJ, and that'll bring you to a landing page where you'll be able to access the free bonus content, and it'll also direct you over to Amazon to get the book if you'd like. Included in that is a 30-minute training video. So if you really just want to like get as much DIY as you can, my ideal prospect is someone who's very educated about the bigger problem. And so a big piece of what I try to do in all of these interviews and trainings is to have people start to see that shift, because no one's going to buy my bigger solution or yours if they don't think they need it.
Right. And it goes back to also is listening to our clients. Our clients tell us what business we're in. I have had that happen to me several times. Right when the pandemic happened, I had a manufacturing company where I was to do 3 programs for them. Well, it all closed down because of the pandemic. And the person who hired me said, MJ, I wish you had digital programs.
Mm-hmm.
Our clients tell us what business we're in if we listen to them,
If we
or
listen.
when we listen to them.
I want to share one other thing that comes up a lot. So we just talked about doing a more thoughtful outbound strategy to set up research calls. But sometimes, and this happens to me quite often, you find yourself on a call where you're giving a lot of free advice. This could be a colleague catch-up call, a get-to-know-you call, a coffee chat, a pick your brain, which we shouldn't really be doing anymore.
Right.
Any of those things. And I used to I am a giver of knowledge. I deeply believe in the philosophy of abundance. Time and money will deplete, but knowledge will raise us all up. And I love giving it away. But I was quickly, well, it didn't, not so quickly. I realized eventually that those people didn't circle back to hire me. And I think that probably people watching this have had that same experience. You have at the end, you're like, I feel really good about that call. And they're really like, oh, I feel really good about that call. And they've got this like notepad full of little tactics and ideas. But most people do not take immediate action on free advice. And so
Right.
that notepad gets put to the side. They find it a couple weeks later. They can barely understand their scribbles. They don't feel good about reaching back out to you because you were so generous, and they kind of feel bad that they didn't take immediate action. They see you a week or two after that online or at an event. They avoid a one-on-one conversation because they don't want you to ask them how it's going. They tell a friend what's been going on. The friend suggests a coach. The coach schedules a time and says, talks about what you're trying to do. Here's 2 things that you can try. And, let me know if you need some assistance in coming up with a bigger strategy. And a month later, you hear through the grapevine that that person that you spent an hour giving free advice to 2 months ago has hired another coach. Ouch.
Yes, definitely.
So I have a magical question that will help turn those kinds of calls into a prospecting call. Now, I never hard close on those calls because they were not expecting to be sold to. And I know that the number one reason people get results working with me is because they are really committed to the process. So I will say, if I can tell someone's like really like, wow, I'm ready to do this, I'm like, you know what? Let's give it 2 days. Let's schedule time. And if you decide in 15 minutes you want to just email me and say you're in, that's fine. But I really want to give you the space to look at your calendar and talk to your partner and talk to your whatever and just commit the time to doing this, because it's not going to work if I just rush them in. And I'm going to say this question out loud. And I'm also going to tell you that if you go to robbiesamuels.com/magical, which Pay will drop in for you, you'll get the text and you'll get a video of me explaining it, and you'll get an excerpt from my book. And here's the exact wording for you, MJ.
Okay.
Let's say I was
I'm
chatting
ready.
with you. I gave away a couple of pieces of advice. You're like, this is great. I need to catch myself before I keep indulging. And so I will say, you know what? I have so many ideas for you because you sound a lot like the clients I work with. Would you like to hear what it'd be like for us to work together? I've never gotten a no. No one I've shared that with has ever gotten a no. Now, that doesn't mean it leads to a sale every time, but now they're curious. Now, the danger is that you will jump in and want to then tell them about my program, my price. No one cares. Not yet.
Yeah.
So instead, you have to then quickly think of a client that they do remind you of, the reason that person came to you, and the results they got from working with you. share that quick story and ask, are those the results you're
Mhm.
looking for? That is the beginning
Yes.
of a sales process. And I've got a whole, idea about how to move people through stages of a sales process. But that at least begins to shift this from, I'm picking your brain, Robbie, for free, to, oh, wow, I could actually hire you. Like, I want to think about that. What would that look like? And even if they don't hire you, you become a much stronger likely person to have referrals sent to you, because
Mhm.
now they really starting to understand what you do.
Well, too, then they can step back and say, "Oh my goodness, Robbie helps somebody just like me. And if they could help that person, he could help me."
Exactly.
So it does make sense. One of the things that I like to do is after a call is I call it the 3 bullet summary,
Hmm.
so that they have that in email and I can refer back to them. But you're so on target there that if we don't reach out to them within 7 days or 14 days, they do forget about us, you
I
know?
really like what you just said. Is really the next step is to do a recap email for people um, pretty quickly, like within the day,
Sure.
so that you also remember. I mean, I don't know how many times I have these calls a month, so I lose track of each person's nuance. But if I can go back to that email as a refresher before reaching out, or maybe before getting on the next call, then I get on the call and say, "Hey, how's it going with X?" And I
Yes.
I was going to tell you, I had a dental hygienist for about 12 years. And I saw her every 6 months. And every 6 months, she would ask me in an opening question something incredibly relevant to my life. And I thought this was a
Mhm.
remarkable thing. I mean, how
Yes.
many people does she see? I could barely remember her name. And she would ask me, she knew exactly what grades my kids were in and like what they were doing and it was always like really specific. And I mean, I teased her about it sometimes. And like she would jot a note down. She would jot a
Mhm.
note down after the call, after the session, or whatever, the appointment, and then that with that little keywords or so would just trigger her memory, and then she would just follow up. So simple, but I have to tell you, as a
Yes.
person who's networking all the time, she wasn't trying to network with me. It was just good human relations. Brilliant. So, what can we do to be the person who asks the most targeted follow up question when we see people? And then people feel seen. I felt so
They
seen.
do. Oh my
By
goodness, I
fire.
can relate to that because my oncologist, so now I see him once every 6 months, but he will always ask me, "How's business? What book are you working on right now?" Always. So he knows whether it's in his notes or whether he remembers, I don't know, but I agree. How many people does he see on a regular
Right.
basis? And it's that out of all the and I've had a lot of doctors and several surgeons. He's well, there's another surgeon that remembers, and it
Yeah.
does. It makes you feel good. You're
Mhm.
right. It makes you feel seen. Okay, we have a question. Oh no, Ben is saying, "Would you like to know what it's like for us to work together?" Brilliant word choice. Absolutely, Ben.
Thanks for capturing that, Ben.
Yes, Ben captured a few, so it'd be great to see the replay on them. And then Carl saying relationships matter. Absolutely. Because we do business with people, not with companies. So, in feeling that authenticity with one another. And then, Ron, you have a lot of comments. Appreciate that ability, MJ. Helps with the
Mm,
talking points. That 3 bullet summary. I use that. I had worked for a national builder, and I always use that because where within 3 miles of where I was, my location, there were 5 other custom home builders. So being able to do that summary, they had it in addition to whatever else they had, but it would allow both of us to go back and forth. So and love how
amazing.
you pulled it in too with it. Okay, so that's the second step is having that summary. So what is the third step here
Well,
if you're
so
working in steps?
so we're creating basically a bunch of content. We're having these calls, we're recording them. If you want to know how to do captions, if you go to robbiesamuels.com/captions and pay if you can drop that in, that is a video I made. It's going to open automatically, just hit mute on YouTube that will explain to you how to actually enable this on the Zoom settings and also in the meeting settings. And I use it all the time. I use it even in one-on-one calls. I'll give the client permission to record, I'll enable a transcript, and then they get both. So when you're doing interviews, don't be afraid to say, hey, so I don't, misquote you, and so I can pay attention to the conversation and not be scribbling notes the whole time. I would love to turn on the captions and recording. I won't be sharing the recording with anyone. Would that be okay? And listen to what they say. Don't assume a no. And then you get all these recordings, and within honestly 24 to 48 hours max, you want to have time set aside to analyze what's coming in. And so there's a spreadsheet in the toolkit in the book that I mentioned as well, where you really pull out the problem language and you rate the urgency, which is why it has to be a recent call so you can remember how it was heard. And then after you've got a bunch of problem statements, you'll start to put them in categories. And this is about, you have each of those problem statements is a tree, but you need to step back and see the forest. You need to see the themes, and you need to start trying to figure out, well, where are the more urgent problems that people are having? And is there some kind of repeat? Is there a theme around some of that? And once you have your sense of that, and now you're going to have to figure out, well, what kind of program would I pilot to really meet people where they are around that one specific thing, like the first problem, the little p problem they really know that they need to fix. I'm going to create a pilot that will absolutely solve that while introducing them to the bigger problem. And you come up with a theory around that, and you come up with a promise or an outcome. In our time together, you will be able to, you will learn, you will grow, you will know, you will do, you will think, you will feel. That's their promise. Then you circle back and you reach out to just some of the people you originally talked to. They have to be the people that you really would want to have in the program. And you say, hey, thank you so much for your time. There was this thing you said to me that's really stuck with me. Insert quote or paraphrase. And so I've been noodling, and I've got some ideas. And now that I've gone a little further down this path, I would love to circle back and just check in with you again. Would you care to give me some time? And when they get on the call, you say, I have just two questions for you. One is, here's the promise of a pilot. Here's the outcome. What do you think? And then just listen. Do not debate. Do not get into it. Let them wordsmith it for you. You might get some amazing results. And then you say, okay, and then here's the other thing. Here's generally the outline. It's going to be a group program. It's going to be 5 sessions. There'll be 90 minutes apiece, and they'll be every week for 5 weeks. Like, you just give that general outline. Okay. And here's the general topics that I think we'd cover each of those 5 weeks. What do you think? Now, I was in the middle of enrolling people in a group program a number of years ago, and I was having lunch with a friend, and I suddenly realized that it was a prospect call. Like, I just wasn't expecting it. So I start telling her about my group program, and she interrupts and says, I don't want to do group right now. I know exactly what I want, and I want to do it now. And I didn't have a one-on-one plan like in my head. And I literally said, one moment, back of napkin math, carry the one. What do you think of this? And so have in your back pocket another modality that might be a better fit. It might be an upgrade or downgrade, depending on what your original offer was. And if they like what your outcome, and they generally like the flow, what you're planning to do, you say, great. The reason I reached back out to you was, I think you'd be great for this pilot. And you've given such great feedback, and I'm hoping you will continue to. And in appreciation of that, the price is going to eventually be blank, but I'm going to offer to you for 50% of that because of your ongoing feedback. We're going to it'll be a bespoke experience for this first cohort, and I really would love for you to be part of it. What do you think? And now you might even ask the enrollment question without saying the price, because you might want to get them to say, yeah, I really want to do this, but wait, how much? Like, you want to remove all objections and then have price be the only one, really. And by the way, you have to charge.
Yes.
I find people always shrink back from this, and I'm like, what did you validate? Yes. I don't know what you learned from that. Right. There are a lot of entrepreneur TV watchers out there. So you need to be careful to separate that community from people who are ready and serious.
There is ones that I did. First, I love the way that you wrap that out. One, because you're offering them recording, you're giving value to them, and you can play that up. You'll have this, you'll be able to go back, listen to it. 2, being able to do the captions and the transcript with it, and then pulling them into the prospect of making them a prospect or having them be a prospect, and then going into this sales conversation. So I love how you did that. One of the things that I did with a brand new program, I wasn't sure, and this came at the beginning of the pandemic. I heard so many people say, I am so stuck. I don't know what to do with business. And I heard that word over and over. And I thought, I'm going to do from stuck to success, bounce up, stuck to success. So I put it out to 15 people that I knew, and I gave them the reason why. I only had one person call me to ask me more questions. I had 10 people sign up. But what I did for it was I said, pay what you can. So it was one of those pay what you can. I had several people that paid me twice as much as what was in my head to sell it for.
Wow.
So that can happen too. So if you're starting something, yes, definitely have an idea of price in mind. I love that you said have option B. I'm calling it plan B,
Mhm.
that extra, so that if they can't do or don't want to do a group, they can do a one-to-one or vice versa.
One of the things I think is really great about your story is that 2 years ago this week and over the next months is there was a lot going on and no one wanted to take advantage of friends that were on having a difficult time. So I think that was a great idea in that moment, in particular, to do a pay what you can, which is get people on their feet, and the people who felt like they could contribute more kind of offset the people who couldn't. So
Right.
I just think that it's also really good to know your value and to start somewhere and,
Yes.
start at $500 for 5 sessions. Could be a good starting place, but you're not going to get to $5,000 if you charge $100. It's just like mentally too
Yeah.
difficult for people. And so think about where you ultimately want to
Yeah.
go, and you'll just kind of validate along the way. Because I had a program that was 5 weeks, then 3 months, then 6 months. So the price, kept leaping forward. But what I learned was the 3-month program wasn't long enough because I had 3 extra months of people coming to me for questions. And it made me realize, oh, they need support in the implementation process. So it became a 6-month program. So you have to really listen to what people need.
Yes. And sometimes you're right. 3 months is not enough time, that you really do need that 6, that 9, that 12 moving forward. The Robbie, we are coming towards the end of our time. So this has been so fast and furious. I love it. What is something you would like to leave with our audience?
I believe that you've already met 80% of the people you need to know to be successful. I will say that again. You have already met 80% of the people you need to know to be successful. So rather than thinking of networking as trying to collect lots of business cards and trying to add to your Rolodex, it's really about nurturing and connecting and re-engaging with your existing network of people who know, like, and trust you. You may have worked with them 5 years ago or 15 years ago or gone to college with them. They are people you can reach out to. You don't know what industry they're in now. You don't know who their cousin is. You just need to let people know what you do. So it's time to wake up your network. And you can do that both through the process I've been describing with research calls, but I think you need to complement it with a really thoughtful content strategy of putting information out on the platform where your audience is. Like for me, it's LinkedIn. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that would really help people, and I would love for people to connect with me on LinkedIn. I do share quite a bit of content there as well.
Oh, great. Ben, if you can put that phrase in the conversation in the comments, that would be awesome. Not sure, but I think he's still on. He said, I love this discussion. Also, you two obviously sync well. Look at your backdrops, weathered wood, planks, and books, both very sharp. Thank you. So, Robbie, this has been absolutely fabulous. I really appreciate it. Now, we did pop up quite a bit on how people can get a hold of you. Can you repeat one more time so that
Sure.
we can make sure everyone knows?
So my website is robbiesamuels.com, where you can learn all about my multi-passionate entrepreneurial journey and how I can support you. Specifically, the Big Results Toolkit is available at robbiesamuels.com/MJ. So just request it, and then it'll be sent to you via email, and you'll be redirected to Amazon if you'd like to check out the book. It's available at Kindle or paperback. RobbieSamuels.com/magical is to learn that magical question of turning those free advice calls into prospect calls and exactly when and how to use it. And I also mentioned /captions to show you how to turn on captions. I have so much free content on my website and I share on social, and I would love to direct you to exactly the resource you need right now.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome. I appreciate it. I appreciate also you jumping right in my time of need here. So
I'm glad it worked out.
definitely look forward to building a relationship with you. So, all right, everyone, thank you so much for joining. And remember to make it a bounce up day. Until next time.